My home, the Philippines, is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the climate crisis. Last year, the strongest storm landfall on recorded history hit the Philippines, and barely a week after that, another typhoon poured over a month's worth of rain in under 24 hours. I was on my way home when it happened. My mom called me and told me not to go home because the roads to our house were already flooded. I had to stay at a friend's place with no electricity, not knowing if my mom was okay, if I would have a place to come home to. The floods in my city reached up to the second floor of buildings, or 12 meters or 40 feet high. People were stranded on rooftops in an effort to survive. This is what it's like to live in the Philippines. Growing up, there were weeks that I had to do my homework by candlelight because of the raging typhoons outside. And I'm already one of the more privileged ones. So many have it so much worse than I do. These typhoons have only been getting worse and worse. Growing up, we were frequently visited by the wails of the rushing wind, the heavy footsteps of rain, and the angry banging of thunder. The fear of typhoons and drowning in my own bedroom were constant companions. My climate anxiety, exacerbated by climate trauma, consumes me. We're already going through hell, and things will only get exponentially worse as business as usual practices continue and as key players keep spewing out empty rhetoric and false promises. But for activists in the Philippines, the consuming fear of the climate crisis comes hand in hand with something else. The fear of the wails of a siren, the heavy footsteps of uniformed officers, and angry banging on our door. In the Philippines, activists can get arrested without a warrant, can disappear without a trace, and can be killed in broad daylight. Jory Porquilla, Zara Alvarez, Randy Echanis, Baemilda, Merly Celis, Marlon Maldos, and more, all activists and environmental advocates brutally murdered last 2020, some of them in the middle of preparing for community kitchens for farmers economically affected by the COVID-19 lockdowns. The Philippines is the second deadliest country in the world for environmental defenders, and those killed were leaders and advocates who were fighting for the rights of the people and the environment. Yet the government chose to silence them because they were against the status quo. That is how activists are treated here in the Philippines, as terrorists. I have been called a terrorist numerous times on social media, in my messages, getting death threats, having people say that I don't deserve to be helped because I was a girl and I was wearing short shorts. The general army of our country said that young girls wearing short shorts are doing it, calling to protect the environment, to entice young men to join the rebel army. I took my first step into activism not fully understanding the fears and risks that came with it. I remember the exact moment that I realized that I needed to join the people's struggle. In 2017, a Lumad indigenous leader told us about how they were being displaced, harassed, militarized, and killed, all for protecting the forests, their home, our environment. He then very casually shrugged and chuckled and said, in the simplest possible way, that's why we have no choice but to fight back. This shattered my worldview. He wasn't even trying to convince us of anything. To him, it was logical. It made sense to be an activist. There is so much to learn from our environmental defenders. In the Philippines, my organization, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, focuses a lot on raising awareness about the climate crisis and working with our farmers, fisherfolk, and indigenous peoples towards a better future. A lot of what we would do in order to do this is to bring students to communities of our environmental defenders so we can learn from them. They have this unique and powerful experience and knowledge that we will never fully grasp without fully integrating with them and living from the land. In turn, we tell them about climate science and also empower them with knowledge on who to demand accountability from and about climate justice. We have to recognize and empower the marginalized sectors of society because most affected peoples and areas, or MAPA, those most marginalized, those from the global south, we are not voiceless or people that need to be saved. Instead, stand in solidarity with us, talk to us, and fight with us. Silence the room and make space for us. We are not just anecdotes in your speech about how bad the climate crisis is. Talk about how we've been fighting climate injustice for all our lives. We are not just sad stories and statistics. We live in a scary world. Climate activists are being silenced for telling people that our house is on fire and we need to do something about it. Climate activists are called terrorists for wanting a safer present and a green future, and the situation is so much worse for so many others at the front line. There's a fear that comes naturally with the rising deaths of our environmental defenders and activists, not just in the Philippines, but globally. I still haven't fully understood this fear, just that now I know that with every case of online harassment, warrantless arrests, terror tagging, or extrajudicial killing, it only continues to grow. But with every blow of injustice, our resolve also gets stronger. It becomes clearer and clearer that we have no choice but to fight back. It's only logical. We must continue to walk the path of activism despite the threats. No, because of the threats to our lives and liberty. This is the life we choose. Now more than ever, we need to join hands and really get society to change for the better on both the individual and systemic level. The COVID pandemic showed that our system right now is not working and is leaving a lot of those from MAPA behind. The same is true for the climate crisis. This moment can be, must be, a turning point for the whole world for us to change our ways and to break away from business as usual and fundamentally change a lot of what we take for granted in society. To everyone listening, I hope everyone would take a step back and listen to us in the most affected areas, recognize the problem as a global problem, and to channel their anxiety and emotions into changing our shared planet for the better. We must do this for the love of our planet, for the love of our people. It is through love that hard decisions are made, through love that we stick to these difficult tasks. It is through love that revolutions are won.